There we go. Now we got everything back in order there. All right. We're in verse 9 in the book of Zephaniah, verse 9, chapter 2 and verse 9. Therefore, surely as I live, says Joshua of hosts, the father of Israel, surely Moab will be like Sodom, the children of Ammon like Gomorrah, a nest of nettles and salt pits, a desolation forever. The abomination makes desolate on the hill, those beast men, the he-goat, and the man, the higher man that will come up at the end. Daniel said the higher one that will come up in the end, and we'll go to that here momentarily as well. Remember that residue. Remember that residue there? The residue. Remember the ram in Daniel chapter 8? He trampled the residue under his feet. The residue, meaning what little bit of the lies that are left in their plan and their ideology, he was trampling it underfoot. So now what's going on is I am that ram. Remember the ram in Micaiah chapter 4 and verse 13. And if you look at that numbers back, when this whole thing started 3 years ago, Yeshua said you need to be looking at numbers backwards, Micaiah, with the bronze feet. Okay, that ram that had two horns that they thought to cast out. Israel, I've left you, Micaiah. Well, they're not my messengers, although a horn is giving a message out, and there's his 2 billion. You have your he-goat, but he's going down. He was saved from the noose by the other beast men who gave him some false promises regarding a lamb or something that they wanted to trade to have their way in their heightened sense of ecstasy, where they constantly stay in heat like neighing horses. But the higher man and the he-goat and the higher man that comes up, or the higher horn that comes up at the last. And we're going to go to that. But that ram trampling that residue under the feet. So you see that word residue. So when you see these words, if you go back to, I know I saw that word somewhere else, and you chain over there and study that word out in the side note, that's how you get the plan. I've seen that word, I've seen that word, I've seen that word, I've seen that word. And then the key is it's only applying to the heel and to the baptized members. They are the players in this final part here. Give him 7 arrows to get it right. And out of each one of the arrows, he took a family. The house of Micaiah eternal is that family Yeshua chose. The one true seed of Israel. And you'll be coming out to join yourselves here to this work. But we see that word residue there. So, and we know that that Daniel chapter 8, and we'll go to that soon as well. So now look over to the book of Hosea. Look over to the book of Hosea. Look over to the book of Hosea. And that is on page 689. 689. Book of Hosea. 689. 689. And we're going actually Hosea 3. So that would be on page 486, or excuse me, 686. 686. And actually, let's go back over to chapter 2 of Hosea. Now look at Hosea. This is showing who it is, okay? This is showing who this is right here. I like that verse, chapter 1 and verse 1, that son of Yaash, the king of Israel, Yaash, the king of Israel, Yaash. Isn't that pretty amazing there with that Yaash, which means the fire of Yahweh, the fire of Yahshua, the zealous fire of Yahshua, the fire of Yahshua, Yaash. And that is the Hebrew name of the child, the true child. We're going to get into that in a second here. So, Yaash, remember that. It says right here, King of Israel, Hosea. And remember, all this is speaking in the last days, because in the closing, he shows in the book of Hosea here, he will show that they will be saviors, and he's speaking to the house of Israel all the way through the book of Hosea. All of them, all the prophets did. They all wrote to us that we would get it right for their sakes, because they without us will not make it, Pastor said, and it's written. For verse 8, chapter 2, for she did not realize that it was I who gave her grain. This is the Father, the teacher speaking. Declares that the God worshippers take the glory from Yahshua and they attribute it to Yahshua's blessings to their gods on the hill. Isaiah 42:8 for your notes. But here again, chapter 2 and verse 8, she did not realize that it was I who gave her grain, wine, and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold. Well, there's that word grain. The wine, which is 2406, 2591 right here, 2406 in the Strong's Hebrew. The wine, these teachings, that best wine saved for last. The oil, and their wine is coming from, they're just twisting it. And we'll get into that also. And the oil, and multiplied her silver and gold. Multiplied her believers, the taking out the silver and the gold, the greatest of the people, the believers, and the strongest of the strong who will be coming out. Multiple, which they sacrificed to Baal in their mind, twisting the prophecies, confusing them, thinking that it was the Lord that gave these blessings when it was Yahshua. It is Yahshua. All great things in Jacob, it says, come down out of Yahshua. Okay? Therefore, verse 9, I will return and take away my grain. Wow, 2406. Coming from wheat, 2591 in its time, 3.5 years. And my wine in its Tekufa season. Now we're going into a Tekufa season. There is going to be great rejoicing by the righteous. The wicked are going to whine and weep because their time is up. They're staying in constant heat. They're thinking that their way is going to succeed has come to an abrupt end, and it's going to suddenly, it's written in the scriptures, it says suddenly destruction comes upon them. I will recover my wool and my linen, given to cover her nakedness. And not your wool and linen, Mr. Beast Bear Man, Laos, false divining serpent and prophet. That is not Yahshua's talit. Okay? Verse 11, I will also cause all her joy to cease and cause her feast days and her new moons and her Sabbaths and all her appointed feasts, which are a stench in the nostrils. Then we look at, I will destroy her vines and fig trees. These are the rewards that my lovers have given to me. All those things. So I will make them a forest, like oak forest, and the beast of the field will consume them, will eat them. You're going to be the head and not the tail. Verse 13, Hosea chapter 2, verse 13, I will visit. Well, wow, that is verse 7 right here in the book of Zephaniah. Yahshua, their father, will visit them and care for them. But it's twofold. Simultaneously at the same time. You're either visited by Yahshua and cared for it in verse 7 of chapter 2 of Zephaniah, that word visit, or you come over here to Hosea chapter 2 and verse 13, which is your chain. I will visit punishment upon her for the days of the Lord's gods, which she burned incense to. She decked herself with earrings and jewelry and went after her lovers. And she forgot me, says Yahshua. Therefore, behold, I'm going to allure her and bring her into the wilderness and give her understanding. And I will assign to her there. Sounds like the wilderness again. That sounds like Revelation chapter 12. A place that Yahshua had prepared for her. G3, and she shall be a praise to Yahshua as she did when she was delivered out of Egypt. And I will assign to her there, her vineyard, in the valley of Achor, trouble, as a door of hope. The valley of trouble right here. Assigned to her the valley of trouble that troubled those wicked men. That's the trouble. Boy, that's a troublesome message. Glad tidings out of the east, troubled the he goat. As a door of hope. And there's your door of hope. There it is. There's your door of hope. Yeshua is that door. He has set before us an open door. No man can shut this message up. She will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. Coming up in the land of Egypt and Sodom, spiritually, Jerusalem, where they thought this Revelation calls it. For I will take away the names of Balaam, the Lord gods, out of their mouths, and they will no longer be called upon. Okay? Okay? So, now, what we're looking at here is, again, we spoke about those pillars, and in that 1129 law class, you want to talk about pillars. A pillar of fire by night, Emotion 9:1, the pillars who will come upon their heads. So, we're looking at, flip over a few pages to Hosea 6:89, and we see those pillars, once again, those pillars are there. Their heart is divided, and now they are found guilty. Verse 10 in chapter 2 of Hosea, on 689 in your book of Yeshua for your notes. They're found guilty, and he will break down their pillars. And he will destroy their sacred pillars. Their sacred pillars, what they consider sacred. Yisrael was his spreading vine. Yet the more Yeshua multiplied his fruit, the more Yisrael multiplied at their altars. The more bountiful he made his land, the more they embellished their sacred pillars. Verse 1. It's life-giving here. Life-giving pillars will come here. Emotion 9:1. The life-giving pillars will come down upon their heads, the heads of those wicked people on the hill. They will stand upon their feet. There's your pillars. Not your pillars, Mr. Dastardly Lion, Mr. Son of Perdition. Not yours. Prophecy being fulfilled. You're knowing who they are. Should be running right through you, huh? So we look back over to Zephaniah 7:13. The book of Zephaniah on 7:13. Zephaniah for your notes. We're looking at 2, and we were at verse 9, chapter 2 and 9. The residue of my people will plunder them. That's what they did when they left out of Egypt, with that cloud of witnesses. And the remnant of my people will possess them. Not going to be the tail any longer. It's going to be the head. In righteousness this time around. Always remembering what occurred on the hill in these prophecies. They're in the cloud. It's in the cloud. My words in these videos are in the cloud, and everybody's going to be watching them on the sea of glass forever and ever and ever and ever, and forever and ever and ever more. Both backwards and forwards, these visions of me on this sea of glass will be seen and witnessed, even with eyes of fire. Okay? All right. And are there any other notes in that book of Zephaniah we want to go over? Send ambassadors by the sea. We looked at the residue in verse 9. Daniel, turn over to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7 on page 678 for your notes. And look at verse, now look at verse 3. 4 beasts came up from the sea on the hill. It's a parallel now. You have the quartet. Yeah, we know the United Nations, the EU, the United States, and the United Nations, the EU, the United States, and who's the other one? The European Union, the United Nations, the United States, and Russia. So we know those four beasts, but the parallel, four cherubim, lion, eagle's wings. Wow, she'll be given 2 wings of an eagle. Revelation. It was made to stand upon its feet like a man. A man's heart, behold another beast, like a bear. Had 3 ribs in its mouth. Another like a leopard. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and exceedingly strong, and it had great iron teeth. Iron? It devoured and broke in pieces, then trampled the residue with its feet. Wow. That's Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse 9 for your chain reference, and let me chain it too. Let's go there. Circle that word. Residue. And we'll draw a line down here, Zephaniah 2:9. Okay? And we'll do the same here, Daniel. We have it written down. That's Daniel 7 and verse 7. Okay? Verse 8. Oh, it was different. Okay, it broke. It had iron teeth. It broke. It was different from the other beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. Okay? Ruling powers. That, there'll be no place in heaven and earth. They'll be given a kingdom for a short time, but they're going to stand afar off after what comes up here, and they're going to be, whew. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up another little horn. He seemed insignificant, before whom there were 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots, and his horn like the eyes of a man. Okay. The books were opened. There's that word books, verse 10 in Daniel chapter 7. The books. I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horns spoke, and beheld until that beastly system on the hill was slain by the message, and body destroyed, given to the burning flame, because there's a colon there. The horn isn't the beastly system, the beast. His words, his message, his horn, his words. And that horn will be made iron. Micaiah 4:13, the man with the bronze feet, with the iron teeth, Daniel just said had iron teeth, putting it all together, that ram with 2 horns. Okay? Verse 21. And I saw in the night vision, let's look at verse 13. One like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, the witnesses of the clouds of heaven on the hill. To here. It's done. You're living a goddamnable lie if you don't believe into this message and know it. This is it. Yeshua is worthy. This is his house and family. You must come out. The bridegroom goes out. Come out that you do not receive of her plagues. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Come out, my people. So, I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and revealed the interpretation of these things to me. The saints will take the kingdoms by force and possess the kingdoms. Coming down, let's go down to beheld, G2, against the house of Yeshua. That same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. I'm glad. So that the house of Yeshua, says the house of Yahweh, that they were cruel against the house of Yeshua here. Yes, we are putting it out there. If it seems cruel to you to have the truth revealed to you, then let it be so. Mine is a hob. Yeshua's is a hob as correction with a rod of iron to correct, given to a man. A horn of iron to correct. Micaiah 4 and verse 13. Okay? To prove these things to you all. Okay? Praise Joshua. Made war. They've made war against us. Revelation chapter 12. The Micaiah, the her, the Lamb's bride. And he will spread against you and mentally attack and cause to fall away. I hope you're falling. There's going to be a great falling away from the Catholic Church mindset. They've ascended to 7 hills on the hill. They've ascended to 7 hills on the Rome, to Rome on 7 hills in their ideology, in their heart-mind connection. To sit means to ascend, heart-mind connection. Sat is ascended. Look it up in the Strong's Hebrew. They will think themselves able to change the times, the feast days. Okay? Now let's look at chapter 8 of Daniel. Look at verse 3. I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, standing beside the river, there was a ram. A ram with bronze hooves. Micaiah chapter 4 and verse 13. With 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high. Mr. He-Goat. But one was higher than the other. And the higher man came up at the last. And I'm about to tell you how he's going to attempt to do that. Okay? The higher man. It says the higher. And we're just quoting Daniel chapter 8 and verse 3. The higher one came up last. Now, they're not my messengers, but this is a time where we're leading by example and ruling according to righteous teachings. And I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that none could deliver out of his hands. Verse 5, and behold, a he-goat came from the west. Without touching the ground, and had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram, and had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran toward him in the fury of his power. And I saw as he advanced upon the ram that he was moved with rage. They will be enraged with the house of Micaiah. Revelation chapter 12, there's that word rage. Just circle that. Put Rev 12 out there. Enraged, rage. Rev 12. There's these words. Okay? And gave him a blow, that he broke off 2 of his horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he threw him down to the ground and trampled upon him. And there was none that could deliver from the ram from his hand. Therefore the he-goat grew very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward each of the 4 winds, the 4 corner positions of the hill. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the land of beauty. And it grew up, the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts in the stars, some of the wicked and some of the teachers who were thought, and trampled upon them. Okay? Verse 11. Let's look. Okay, so we see there these horns, but what I really wanted to note out, there's more in here, but what I really wanted you to notice was Now look at chapter 8 and verse 23. This is in the last days. This is talking about in the last days. This is talking about in the last days, verse 23, chapter 8 and verse 23 of Daniel. And in the last days of their kingdom, when their transgressions have reached their fullness, the king of fierce expression, that one horn, meaning immoral, and understanding dark sentences, being a Jesuit Mason, skilled in trickery, he will stand up to try to start, look at that, a new world order. Isn't that what they do? That fifth world ruling empire? Yeah, that outside geopolitical sources wants everything around here, and they have joined themselves to them with the many threats that are going on from them, okay? And through his politics, look at verse 25 there. Daniel 8 and 25. And through his politics, he will cause deceit and fraud to succeed in his hand, and he will magnify himself in the heart. And by peace, by that false pretense of peace, okay, he will stand against the prince of princes, Yeshua, but he will be broken. Okay? The vision is true, and that's told is true. It even made Daniel faint there in verse 27, chapter 8 and 27, okay? So, we're going to be going over now. Now look at chapter 10 of Daniel. Look at chapter 10. Okay? And look at verse 5. And I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man, G7, a man clothed in linen, who was belted with gold, with the gold of Uphaz or Uphaz. The Malach of Yeshua sent to assure Daniel in the prophecy that follows. His face was the appearance of lightning, his eyes as lamps of fire, as lamps of fire, as lamps of fire, his eyes. That sounds like Revelation chapter 1. He had a gold vest on. His feet were like bronze or gold. That's pretty wild stuff, isn't it? Feet, color. Wait, what's this right here? His feet appeared in color as polished bronze. Wow, that's also in Micaiah chapter 4 and verse 13. And Revelations 1 and verse 4. Are we making it real, or is it just all hocus pocus diddly docus? Which is it? Okay? And the sound of his words was like the sound of a multitude of words. And I, Daniel, because we're here a little, there a little, we're all over. Daniel saw it. He had to put it all together. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. That it was with me, with men with me, but the men with me did not see the vision. And great terror fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves from the face of the one sent by the Lamb. The face of the Lamb. One of the men had a face. Those four living creatures, the quartet ain't living. They're dead in sin, just like those on the hill who reject this message in their rebellion against it. Their witchcraft that they will not repent of, even after 1/3 is slain and come here. You need to repent. Here's your door of hope. Okay? And then verse 3, Daniel chapter 10, and look at verse 21. So there's 13, Micaiah. Someone named Micaiah in Daniel 10 and 13 speaking to him. But look at 21, verse 21 of Daniel chapter 10 and verse 21 there on 682 in the book of Daniel for your notes. But I will show you that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holds with me in these things except Micaiah, your ruler or teacher. It shows one of the chiefs or one of the teachers. Yeshua is the ruler. He is the ruler of all rulers and the king of all kings. But G4, it says this Malach was appointed for the defense of the house of Yahshua. That's Daniel 12 and verse 1 also, isn't it? Who stood for the children of Israel? Israel, right? He was appointed. Wow. His name is Micaiah. And appointed is Malchiah, Malchiah. Right there in the side notes. Just saying. I mean, you can look in the back of the book of your book of Yahshua or Yahweh or Yahshua there, and you'll see what that word appointed means. Malchiah. My first Hebrew name given to me by a priest from Tennessee. Wow, he'll only have volunteers, huh? We're going to get more into that. As we see in Daniel chapter 31 there, the army will stand on his part. Okay? And look at chapter 20. Look at verse 24 there in 11. Peaceably he will invade the richest parts of the province. He will do neither the former, neither his fathers nor his forefathers ever did. He will distribute among the prey the plunder. Yes, those of the people who aren't understanding this message, who've lived in the bungalows and the laws are being kept within Yeshua's laws. Okay? And the riches. And he will plot the overthrow of strongholds, but only for a time. Okay, so moving forward, we are in the book of Sophania, and we saw that 2:9 with the residue that took us over to Daniel. We saw the foul and unclean and hateful birds. Okay, so that was basically what I wanted to show you there on that. Now, we got a prophecy, though, here. We have a prophecy here that I wanted to share with you, that I'm going to try to make it as best as in a vision. As Daniel said in chapter 10, he had visions, and so those here having visions as well, receiving visions, as Yael said that the children of Israel would have. His pastor said there'd be dreams and visions, and his son would come prophesying. So, those things being said, there was a great vision given, and I want to go into that vision. And it's, again, there is, one ate bread and wine with me on the hill, a child did. And they tried to reject giving it to him. I've told this testimony before. And he was sitting next to me and he was crying because all the children around were being given the bread and the wine. It was his first feast, and I broke off a piece of mine and gave him some of my sip of my wine. And I called Pastor afterwards and told him what had occurred with those beast men and how they had treated him. And he said, "What? I can't believe it." He said, "I would have done the same thing you did, son. I'd have given him some of my bread and wine." And that child is part of the plan. He partook of the body and of the wine, and he's part of this family. And he is from Davidson County, Tennessee, David's son. He is the child. Yaash. You see, the king of Israel in this time period. A child shall lead the way. And he's growing up, and he comes every feast. He's been faithful, and he's come every feast, and he's performing priestly duties, and he's being trained up in righteousness by the family here through Yeshua, leading and guiding this work, and being the head over this house and leading and guiding us. And he is growing very rapidly, growing up, being brought up in righteousness, and he's growing in wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And I talk to him just about every day, and we share these wonderful prophecies and scriptures together. And in a vision that Yazalia, Yeshua telling me that she is a prophetess, and we got back to the pillar of light, the pillar of fire rather than the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, and the first coming out Moshe passed her to the Mount Nebo, and then your second resting place here in Elam, 362, my original co-op number, which leads to the 352 and the 0193, the 0193, which is in Revelation in the side note as well, Revelation 12 side notes, where my name is, and those side notes there in Revelation 12, to be coiled together into one body. It says, see Strong's Hebrew 193, the family and the body and the bride. Look it up. This was on the H&S truck that I rode in for years, and then ended up, thought I was being a blessing to somebody by selling it at a very, now remember, the plan resting here, it is Joshua, and he's got it resting here with his bride now to deliver these things. So, Yeshua leading and guiding. One day, years ago, now here's the testimony, one day, years ago, and all the Malachim have told me that child belongs to this family and is who I just told you he is. Okay, and they thought to deprive the child, and here's how the plan was going, so wonderful and marvelous. But years ago, I would say about 2 years before they thought to cast their brother out of Yahweh and Yeshua, which is impossible. You can't cast him out of anyone, nor can you cast them out of him, out of Yeshua. But anyway, I would say about 5 years ago, knowing Yeshua, foreknowing the plan, seeing the movie or the plan and everything unfold on the sea of glass, foreknowing it, set everything in motion. And it seemed all coincidental, but when you look back and have those visions and flashes, I remember one day I was came out of that south entrance where the men go in and out on that south entrance there, and I was going over to the restroom, I think to pull duty over there in that blue building over there, and behind me, Yeshua said, Micaiah, my king and ruler, the one that called pastor on the phone. He said, Micaiah. I said, yes. I turned around and looked down. I said, yeah. He hadn't revealed himself to me. I said, yeah. I said, what is it? He said, I think it was a feast time too. He said, look over there. I said, where? He said, see that woman over there? And never has he ever said that or done that before. So I knew there was something important about what he was doing. I just didn't understand it quite at that time. And a woman dressed with a white headdress on, or the headscarf, a white veil, and a white dress down to her feet. Kind of almost floated out from the side of the building on the women's side, from the south, straight going south right there. Where that building is, I built to the south and the east, and stopped right there by the grass and just stared down to the south. And he said, do you see? I said, yeah, I see her. He said, he went like that. Like that. And I was like, what's that mean? And she turned and walked and almost looked like she was elevating, just floating right across the surface of the ground. But she went back and I was like, wow, what was that? And he said, you'll know. Well, I told my sister Yazalia, the prophetess, the one Yeshua told us prophetess, I told her this testimony. She said, you ain't going to believe this. But when I came in 2008 to my first feast, she sat right next to me at my right hand. And the dastardly lion, son of perdition, yes, that horn, that man who will come up at the last, the higher man, who will come up at the last now, was at the lectern. And she said, the woman in white said, "That's my head." And my sister said, That's so-and-so. My brother is close to him and knows him." Oh, and I do now. I didn't then, but I do now. She was trying to tell me then the frequency. And I was like, no, I rebuked her. So I apologize. Please forgive me on that, sis. But now it's all come from Yeshua into the light. All things being revealed as prophesied it would be. Things unfolding through the course of time. And she said, the woman says, "That's..." And she said to my sister, she said, "Well, I've got to get going after services was up." And my sister said her frequency, I couldn't really stand to be around her. She knew who Yazalia was. My sister would be joining this work as a bride to Yeshua, to this family. And she told my sister that she was from Lebanon, Tennessee. Now, I've built a lot of custom houses in Lebanon. I grew up in a city called Gallatin in the suburbs in Sumner County in Hendersonville there, where all the country music singers lived, right outside of Davidson County. Born and raised in Davidson and in that area, and right in the suburbs, I built a lot of houses as carpenters travel an hour, sometimes 2-hour radius to build. It's what we do. And so, I built houses in Lebanon there, and it wasn't too far away from where I grew up. But the interesting thing about that is we take note with the word Lebanon with the cedars of Lebanon. And we know the cedars are trees, and you can look at the cedar tree and the cedars of Lebanon in Yekezkiel 17 for your notes. Because here's the vision that Yazalia and that others have given to me. The dastardly lion and Hallel, who walks among the living stones, who floated across the ground. Yeshua pointed her out to me for this very day, knowing I was going to do this very day. Witness to you, giving you this prophecy so that you will know their plan. The dastardly lion, the higher man who will come up at the end because of all the exposure against the first horn, the he-goat. Now, in his spirit that provokes to jealousy, as he is deeply enraged and angry, will move to bring his child with Hallel, that woman that was there who is on the hill, who walks up and down in the midst of the coals of fire, the stones of fire. He will move to bring that child here now, saying, "Look, he's a volunteer. He's from Tennessee." Yeah, Yeshua have only volunteers. Look, from Lebanon, the cedars of Lebanon. Look. It's my boy. With that bloodline of Hallel and Cain. And he's going to speak some great and terrible words. That's his child. That's his child. Their child together. The child in Revelation that represents the body of the celestial light beings who will be as accounted as an atonement of being under the age of accountability and having no sin. Belongs to this family. Belongs to this family. 727, the palindrome, the ark of the chest containing the covenant. 727. 3130 up here in the corner in this white tag right here, Strong's Hebrew. Yosef, I will cause him to increase. Everything Yosef did pleased the Father. You know now their plan that they're planning to bring. The child they plan to bring before you. Being expertly trained and raised up in covetous practices, knowing this scripture, trained by his mother. This is the deep secret plan and vision they have, their final, and this is their final wound. This is their wound. Yep. And this is why they're enraged in hate. And no one can foretell except Yahshua the future. No one. Yisrael could not. He calls me on the phone and tells me, talks about the prophetic work and the workers who are doing. I am one of those workers. The destroyer of the adversaries of Yahshua. Those who hate his plan and seek to devise and scheme their own plan and will. Okay? So now you have in your heart and mind what they plan to do. We've covered these prophecies and these scriptures. And we went back over the book of Zephaniah. We know who he is. The dastardly lion is. The son of perdition is. The higher man who will come up there in the book of Daniel, chapter 7. Okay? During a time period of a ram who was supposed to be teaching and ruling in righteousness, and that which I've done and tried, rather, there is one who is righteous, our righteousness, Yahshua, who reveals all things. This is that life-giving spirit that has come upon us that reveals all things. 16:13, Yachanan there, Mr. Bear Man, Mr. Divining Prophet, false prophet. So, now that these things are upon us all, you need to stay tuned in. Go back and play this side by side with the 12-2 New Moon presentation there on our YouTube channel. We had a cutoff, so when you tune in to the YouTube channel to get today's sermon, it'll be a part 1 and a part 2. I didn't turn the notifications off, and it ran. When they ring the phone and I don't turn the notifications off, it stops the recording. So please forgive us for that, and listen to part 1 and 2 of today's. It's just really all to one sermon, but I'll probably sew it together and have to list it as a part 1 and part 2 for today. Okay? So go back and listen to these things. Be encouraged. Come out from among her, my people, that you do not partake of her sins and that you do not receive of her plagues. We'll reverence Yahshua and close out. Almighty Father Yahshua, greatest teacher in all the earth, Yahshua, who is alive forevermore. Your servant and slave in your house, your begotten son, Micaiah, Jacob, asking to come before you in unity with all who are like-minded after the order of Melchizedek throughout creation, who are in hearing of this prayer. Asking to approach your throne this Sabbath day. You being our king, teacher, leader, guide, and judge over your house, me, your house, and all to come. Shalom, Yahshua. Bless you and thank you. Shabbat shalom. Thank you for these things that this wisdom and knowledge and understanding that you've imparted to us and given to us. Please help us to take this and allow it to be greater than gold, yes, even much fine gold, sweeter than honey, yes, even the honeycomb, that your servants might be warned by them, Yahshua. We thank you, Yahshua, for the many wonderful blessings you bestowed upon your family and your house. Please encourage your people who will be coming out of the hill away from those beast men who've joined themselves to the outside geopolitical sources. Enable them to do righteousness. Please do not allow us to be led into temptation in any way, Yahshua. Restrain the adversary from harming any of your people, and allow no green thing to be harmed in any way until the servants your servants are sealed in their forehead, Yahshua, the servants of our Father, Yahshua, till your servants are sealed up, Yahshua. Please don't allow them to be harmed in any way. And please continue, Yahshua, to strengthen them and to give them courage, to embolden them, that they might resist the false teachings of the he-goat and of the higher man that will be coming up, the higher one, here at the very last of this 5 moons of spiritual warfare that they wage against the house of Micaiah and her Malachim that will be joining, that have joined themselves to this work, Yahshua. And please continue to open the eyes, ears, and hearts and minds, the frequencies of your people. Help them to see those words in the line upon line and the precept upon precept, and to know that you're only dealing with your family in Moshe 3:2. No other family, not anyone outside. They can't perceive or understand. They will later on as we go forward to teach them, and they will look at all these things that are in the clouds, as it is a cloud of witnesses now tuning in, and they're also wondering and having their curiosity aroused, and they want to drink of this life-giving water as well, and are consuming and drinking of it. And we thank you, and we offer ourselves up as living sacrifices, asking that you would reveal your will and plan to us, Yahshua, that we might perform it according to your righteous pleasure. Please forgive us our trespasses and reconcile us back to you always and forever, Yahshua. And we bless and magnify your name. And we say from your house here, the house of Yahshua, the house of Makai Eternal, the Lamb's Bride. Hallelujah, Yahshua. Praise Yahshua. Hosanna to King Yahshua. Brothers and sisters, this is it. There never has been any other plan, nor is there, nor shall there be. This is it. It was written to us by our forefathers in hope that we would receive it. And these things are sure and true. Better grab a hold of it. We'll come to you again later on, Yeshua willing. Shabbat Shalom. Yeshua bless your understanding, everyone.